Good morning. So, 20 years ago this December, I'm sorry, 20 years ago this December 26th, there was an earthquake centered right here off the coast of Indonesia, right, and set off tsunamis that traveled in the direction of all these red circles as far as India. 200,000 people died, and in India, 15,000 in this one stretch of land. And that's why I went to India. I went and stayed for 3 months in these villages. This is the area of India that we spend most of our time working in. It's called Tamil Nadu. Up here is Kolkata. That's important to know because this year, Russ, who's gone with me for 5 years, and Neil, after we did our work in Tamil Nadu, we went to Kolkata and Darjeeling, and Neil will talk about that. So this is Tamil Nadu. The tsunami finally just hit this part of the coast. It was a wave traveling on the bottom of the ocean 600 miles an hour. And when it hit, just in this 150-mile stretch of land, 15,000 people in these little rural villages were killed. I lived in these villages and also went to an orphanage in Tiruvannamalai, where we also spent time. Now, this church has supported these efforts now for 20 years, and I've gone every single year except for COVID. You've sponsored children at the orphanage, and now grown up, and they have children of their own, and they come visit us, and we're sponsoring more children. And you're saving lives, right? Literally. The first place we spent time was in Tiruvannamalai at WIDE Children's Home. And Russ is going to talk about that. Come on up, Russ. Tell us.
Yeah.
In Tamil, Tamil has 12 vowels, 18 consonants, right? I thought maybe I could learn it, but every combination of a vowel and a consonant is a character. So there's 236 characters. So when I first went, the children knew a couple phrases of English. What is your name? Was one sentence, one word. And I'd say Bob, and they'd go Baba, and I'd go Bob, and they'd go Babu, and I'd go Bob, and then they'd go Bop. So I became Babu for many of them. And then they would call Russ and I and Neil uncle. And I learned in Tamil, uncle is mama. And so I'm Mama Babu.
Is this the first one, Bob?
Yeah, it's your first slide.
Okay. All right. Well, good morning. I'm Russell Hart. And you can see this little poster here. We are welcomed so graciously when we arrive at WIDE Children's Home. And believe me, it's very welcome. From the time we leave our homes to the time that we finally arrive at WIDE's Children's Home, it's at least 40 hours of difficult travel through airports and rough traveled roads in sometimes a beat up kind of automobile through difficult roads. But we're very glad, and the children often come out and they greet us. And there is a little bit of a party before they go to school where they'll come out and do a dance for us or do some yoga presentation to music. And it's an enormous amount of fun to finally be there, even though we're tired. It's a very exciting time to be there. Let me see. This is supposed to, here we go. There we go. There's another picture.
Yeah, my wife Vicky was with us. She's gone for 6 years. Couldn't be here this morning because we're doing grandchildren.
So this is what WIDE Children's Home look like. It's a huge structure. There is a residence for the owners, for Kumari and her husband or children. But there's also a place for the boys to live. They sleep there. There is a place on top of the roof with a roof over it where the children all eat. They gather around on the floor. They sit cross-legged on the floor with one plate, and they have one scoop of food that's put in their plate, and they gather around and eat with their fingers. But this is it. Let me see what else. In the middle, you'll see on the left is Kumari. That's her daughter Priya in the middle, and her husband is Xavier. And they are just wonderful people. I can't tell you how much I admire them and appreciate them for everything that they do. Of course, that's Vicky and Bob on the side. And there's a close-up of Kumari and Priya. I love looking at their faces because they exude joy to me. They are just beautiful folks, and they are much beloved by everyone, including the officials, who they think does a great job. There's some things I'd like you to know. That is that Priya has both an MBA and an MSW, Master's Degree in Social Work. And she could be in the city earning oodles of money with those 2 degrees, but she is committed to her mother's vision of operating an orphanage with love, as is Kumari's husband, Xavier. Xavier had a thriving business. I don't know what it was driving then or what, but he invested all of his money in her vision of a caring community, of an orphanage. And so this is a very family-oriented group of folks who are very committed to these kids in such a loving way. There's also another son whose name is Prince, who's now in medical school. And Priya was married, I forget when, 2 years ago, and she now has a child whose name is Lionel, I think. He was 1 in March, I think. Is that right, Bob? Okay. So that's the family. Here's a group of boys who I just loved the year that they were there. Look at these faces. This says a lot about the orphanage itself, in that you see these happy faces. They are just, these boys were wonderful for me to be around. I should say some more about Kumari, though, and I almost have to read this because I couldn't remember it all. Kumari grew up in an orphanage herself, and one day we were sitting around, and she held up this plate, and I brought my own to show you. All the kids eat on a plate like this. They sit cross-legged on the floor, and they get one scoop of food that's put in this. Well, one day we were talking, Kumari and I, and she said, the only thing I brought from the orphanage was my plate. That's the only thing I wanted, was the only thing worth bringing with me. She said, I had food, I had clothing, there was a roof over my head, but there was no love. And so her commitment was to have an orphanage or a home, it's called the Home for Children, to create a home-like atmosphere where there is love. And she is committed to that vision of love. And when I left, she gave me my own plate, which I have breakfast in every morning. It's a way to remember everyone. So you can see these happy faces, and I think it says something about the joy that she's able to create with these, cast-off kids in all reality. Now, when we arrive there, we have these boxes, and there's all this joy, and they all want to see what's in these boxes. And we have the vitamins that we've collected here that you've given, and toothpaste. And there's this kind of joyous thing where it's like Christmas. They open the boxes and they immediately count them. They look like army quartermasters, gathering things together and grouping them by size and so forth and so which. And it says something about the lack of pretense that these kids have. There's no guile among these kids. What you see is what you get. And it's just lovely to be around kids who are like that. They don't have a lot of access to electronic equipment, so they are appreciative of anything and everything they do, or anything and everything that you give to them. What else have I got? Here we go. Here's the toothpaste being piled up, so you can see where your toothpaste goes. And here's those boys again. There's some cows, and these boys take care of the cows, and they love those cows, and the cows love them. And it's wonderful to see them get up early in the morning and milk the cows, and the milk gets supplied to the kids in the orphanage. And they feed them and so forth and wash them and clean them. Oh, talk about family. Here's two kids. These kids love each other. I mean, they really do take care of each other. There was a time, I noticed this, I was so touched by it. There was this little boy, he was maybe about 8, and he was about this high, and he had a huge bucket of white rice. And this 11-year-old girl, maybe she was 12, something like that, sees him struggling, and without being asked, she just jumps up, doesn't take it from him, but takes the handle with him, and together they take this thing upstairs to the kitchen. They help each other in ways that, we don't see here in this country. They just are so willing to jump up and see what needs to be done. And again, I think that's a lot of Kumari's influence. Now, this is a funny thing. This is this group of kids. Bob takes the kids every year to have street food called pani puri. This is a mixture of rice and spicy vegetables, and it's hotter than blazes. But the kids love it, and we have to, from this spot where we were staying in our B&B, the kids said, well, okay, we'll come and pick you up because it was in the other direction. So we heard this clamoring outside the door, and I opened the door, and I was like, ah! Like, oh, here they are, they're behind this door. And they were so surprised to see us, and they were all laughing and giggling. It was so much fun. And so we led them down the street, or actually they led us down the street. It was dark, and it's a rough path. It's barely a street, and it's rock strewn. And of course, these kids all go barefoot, and it doesn't bother them. But the older boys, they're like 12, 13-year-old, they took my hand, and we've got these boys holding onto my hand, It's like you wouldn't see that in the United States. 12-year-old boys would be caught dead holding an old man's hand, guiding him through the streets. So we get to the other end where there's this 4-lane street, and on the end is the cart with the pani puri. And I'm looking for the younger kids so I can help them across the street. Well, the younger boys, they're all looking for me. And the older boys part the sea, and the little boys take my hand and they escort me across the street, which is always, I found it to be hilarious. And here's the bowls of pani puri, and the kids just, sit down on the sidewalk and have a great time. And I take them out for ice cream once a year, and here are some of the boys enjoying ice cream. Here's other pictures of opening up the boxes. As you can see, there's a lot of inspection going on. What do we have here? Here's some of the boys roughhousing. Just in case you think we're not having fun, I have no idea what I was doing there. But somehow we were given instructions. The kids put on shows for us. They do this Bollywood kind of thing, or they'll do a yoga thing. And you haven't seen anything until you've seen Russ Hart doing Bollywood. But you can see that it's a great time. The kids, they play games on us. They spoof on us. They play these games like, thumb war kind of things, or they pretend that they're missing a finger, or Bob started this thing like someone comes too close and you go, oh, hip check, so sorry. And then they all laugh. It's so funny. It's so amazing because no matter what you do, they love the attention no matter in what form. And I really allow myself to be as silly and as goofy as I can possibly be, where here kids would look at me and say, what's with this old guy? But there it's like it's all good and it's all valued because even though there's a lot of love here, they don't get a lot of personal attention. So being able to hang out with a kid and do these kinds of things is just wonderful for them. This was too much for me to remember, so I wrote it down because I didn't want to forget any of it. We talked about Kumari wanting to have a orphanage that was based on love. So instead of having strict rules and discipline, the children are given a remarkable amount of freedom and autonomy, as well as respect and high expectations. They have enormous amounts of homework. They attend the Danish school in the city, but with the exception of 1 hour of assigned work time, they choose when to get their work done. Kumari checks their homework nightly, and if they complete their 10th standard, they'll be able to further their education with pre-college courses. Many of these kids know that this is an opportunity not to waste. They know they could well be on the streets of Mumbai doing things that aren't healthy. So they end up as nurses and teachers and assistants and teachers' assistants. And Kumari has established a council where the children meet and set priorities as well as accept requests from them. One time, instead of going to a park, which Bob had offered to take them, they said, no, we want to go to the cinema. So indeed, we trundled them all off. They got in their best party clothes. And away we went to the cinema to see a Bollywood production. It was 3 hours long. Had no idea what the Tamil was, but you didn't need to because it was like a it was like a melodrama. Kumari is also, I want you to know this, Kumari is a woman of great faith. And although she's chronically short of money, she often says, oh, well, God will provide. And if not, I will do what I can with what I have and wait for the next opportunity. And that's Kumari. Once when I was there, the first time I was there, I gave her $200 and said, this is to cover, because you're feeding me and, whatever else you've got, you can do for the kids. And she says, why are you giving me this? And I was a little bit insulted. What do you mean, why am I giving you this? She said, well, you don't know me. I said, well, I've been here 4 days. I know you well enough. I see what you do. Yes, but you don't really know me. And I don't think I can accept this. Kumari, I'm a therapist. I understand people. I can see your goodness. It shines through. And I see how much you care about these kids. Please accept this. She said, okay, but I'm not going to spend it until I figure out what I'm going to do with it, and then I'll tell you how I'm going to spend it. That's Kumari. That's her in a nutshell. She was not going to accept it. What else have I got here? Let me see. Go back to this. How am I doing on time? I forgot to... Anyone keeping time on me here?
We've got about 20 minutes.
I have 20 minutes?
No.
How much time do I have?
Bob and I have 20 minutes.
Okay, I got to wrap this up then. Here are the kids.
That was the nail polish part.
Yeah.
This is a balloon tossing thing. Don't you love this? Neil and the monkey.
It's your turn, Bob.
Okay. Oh, these are yours.
Yes.
I'm in your territory. I'm
Yes.
sorry. You'll have to
Sorry.
back this up.
I couldn't believe that monkey stayed perfectly still.
No, I put that in because I thought it was important for you to understand that we not only become friends with the children, okay, but Neil's personality just attracts. So, as you've seen, we spend time at the orphanage, okay, and then we travel to the villages along the coast where the tsunami had hit. And this is the first village I encountered right after the tsunami. This was slightly inland, so it hadn't been destroyed in the tsunami. But these people were starving because their boats and nets had been destroyed, right? And they had no way to fish and eat. This was their village. It's a village of 300 people, tribal people. This is their homes. Okay? They have no water to drink, no electricity, no toilet in the entire village. 300 people, 3 could read or write. I lived with them for months. Over the years, with your support and others, this is the village today.
Wow.
We built 60 homes. They built the homes. We supplied the money and the guidance. We brought in a social worker to design the village with them. This is their village, and this is what it's like. When we left, we always talk with them and say, what do we need next? And they came forward and said, Vicky did this for us years ago. We'd like another training center to train women to use foot treadle sewing machines. Right? We need 4 machines. They were $100 each. I pulled $400 out of my pocket. 2 days later, they sent us this photo. They'd bought the machines. They were bringing someone in. The women will get trained. When they graduate, they get the machine. They bring it back to their home, and they have a little business making clothes. They can make $2 or $3 a day and just double the standard of living for the family. This is another village that we went to. This is a prior year, but these are what the villages are like. Cooking outdoors, no toilets. That's one of the houses. There's another house. Now, one of the greatest things that's happened in my 20 years there is cell phones. People have communication. They have knowledge. They know what they should be paid. They know what they should be paying to buy things. Okay? They're in a village with no electricity, no money. One person will have a cell phone and share it. Can you see what's on the top of the roof here?
Solar.
To charge a cell phone. That is the electricity for the village, and a shared cell phone. And they've moved forward generations with that. Right? Right. And we bring food to the villages. Right? Bag of dal, which is lentil beans. That's their protein mixed in with rice and spices. When we go to a village, right, we're greeted, the whole village comes out, and we're greeted with these shawls, right, which to us look like dish towels, and to them it's a great honor, and they're sharing it with us, as well as the flowers, right? Then we sit down and we have a meeting with the village. What's happening? What do you need? We work with local NGOs that are with them all year round to continue the projects. We do micro-lending. We funded everything from herds of dairy cows to tailoring training centers to organic farming. Right? And the children come and pay attention as well. Right? Yes. Anointed, right? Great honor. Okay. This is a village. This one was interesting because Vicki and I built this building in 2008 as the first preschool in a village. We built the preschool because if there's this preschool for the 2- and 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, the mother can go work in the rice paddy and earn $1.50 a day. Right? Then when the children are 6 and 8, they're not pulled out of school to work because the mother has a job. And the children are getting an education. There's a toilet and there's a kitchen. We supply the teacher, we supply the milk, and the village has to supply the meal every day. Right? Since that time, the government, every 10 villages is called the panchayat. The local government has built a school nearby. So now they no longer need the preschool. They've repurposed it. And with the funding that we give to this NGO called BLESS, a non-sectarian NGO I've worked with for 20 years, they've made this into the Village Service Center. It's a community hall. And we were dedicating it. And it says, Mr. Bob, Mrs. Victoria, Mr. Neil, and Mr. Russ, with 3 S's. Well, that was Super Russ. Okay. We work with one NGO called the Human Resource Development Foundation. This is Dayalan. I've worked with him for years. He developed a seed bank. And the farmers can come and get good seeds for the fields. And these are all the different seeds available to them. Right? These are the projects that we could fund with your donations. This was an organic farm that we funded. We do micro-lending. We'll loan a group of women the money collectively. They'll pay it back in a year. If you borrow from a money lender, you'll pay maybe 60% interest. If you borrow from a bank, you'll pay 30%. Right? The NGO, we charge 12%. 3% goes to the NGO to manage the project. The rest of the interest goes back into the fund for next year's loan. Every year, we loan more money. And if the project's complete, the next project they do is a bigger project. This is one that we're very proud of because these women learned to use electric sewing machines and formed a cooperative. And they have this building and they subcontract to clothing companies and make clothing. And they're earning a good salary. All right, Neil, Then after this, Neil took us on another adventure. Thanks, Neil.
Okay. All right, so we're leaving the Southeast Foundation behind. This was the last part of the trip, which was really sightseeing. This was a chance to relax after everything that we'd done at the beginning. So this is Kolkata, and you asked, why did we go to Kolkata? Used to be Calcutta. That's because my dad served for a couple of years in the Second World War in Calcutta. So it's a place I'd always wanted to go to, and then when I finally was able to join Bob, we talked about doing this, and here is Calcutta, or Kolkata as it's now known. It's the second biggest city in India. Population in the city is about 5 million, metro area 15 million. It is incredibly congested, as I think you'll see from this slide. This gives you an idea. As we walked around Calcutta a lot, and this is what we would see. Every conceivable form of transportation you can imagine, from cars to the buses, motorbikes. There's motorbikes everywhere, bicycles, hand carts, and then you mix in a few animals. There are cows and goats and dogs. It is an amazing affair. Notice the interesting wiring on the side there. We won't talk about that too much. Okay, so some of the places we went to in Kolkata. This is Mother Teresa's house, and this is where she established her Sisters of Mercy missionary in 1950, and it's now become a place of homage. Pilgrims come here, as you can see. There's a fascinating museum. There was some incredible photos of her ministering to the sick and to the destitute on the streets of Calcutta during the Second World War, and it brought home, this is what my dad had seen. Got to experience it firsthand. Well, had to have some cricket. That's my game. So we went to, this is Eden Gardens, which is the oldest cricket ground in India. The national team plays here. And also, you may have heard of the India Premier League. It's a huge competition within India, and the Kolkata Knight Riders play here, and they get crowds, full house, 68,000 people. This, as you can see, is a much different kettle of fish, but this is the most iconic monument in Kolkata. It's the Victoria Memorial that was in honor of Queen Victoria when the British were in charge, and then on her death they put up this amazing marble edifice with there's extensive gardens that go with it. We had an incredible boat trip along the Hooghly River on this extraordinary boat. And we went down and we went to a Hindu temple, which was actually like 1897, I think this was built, so it's relatively new by contrast with a lot of places, dedicated to the Saint Ramakrishna. Okay, so here we're at Bhawanipur Cemetery in Kolkata, and there is a part of the cemetery that's dedicated to those who had died in World War I and World War II, mainly British, and this was actually the area that I felt the closest association with my father, because the graves are all inscribed to the people who had fallen, and you'll notice here this gentleman was from the Royal Artillery, and that was my dad was in the Royal Artillery, and many of the graves here are for people from the Royal Artillery. And I subsequently learned that there were 3 gunners, just like my dad, from the same regiment, 54th Heavy Artillery, that their graves are there. And it, again, made me think these are people that my dad probably knew. Some of them might have been friends. Okay, now we're going, our next part of our trip was we went up towards Darjeeling, And the weather is getting decidedly cooler now. It was like in the 80s, most of the places we went to, but in Darjeeling, and this is the Palace Bari tea gardens. And through a series of crazy connections, I was put in touch with the owner. And he said, he was so excited that we were coming, he said, you must stay at the tea gardens. And so this is where we were. The one story that occurs to me here is we each had rooms in this very colonial style building. And the first night, we were awoken at 4:30 by this blaring sound coming out of loudspeakers, and it was the Islamic call to prayers. So we we listened through, and then it finally finished, and we went back to sleep. Half an hour later, there was a repeat, just in case you hadn't got the message. And then we went back to sleep, and then the next one was the call to the workers on the tea plantation to report to work. And so every half an hour. So that was quite an experience, yeah. Okay, I'm going too fast here. Let's go back. All right, there we are. So there we are in the tea gardens, and you can see the tea bushes. These stretch for hundreds of miles. There's loads and loads of these tea gardens. The one that we stayed at was right on the border with Bhutan, so it's right in the corner, up the top here, right up here. We're in the foothills of the Himalayas now. And you see there's trees, various trees scattered around these tea bushes. That's to provide shade for the tea. All right, okay. While we were at these Palace Bari tea gardens, not only did they put us up for free, but they insisted on taking us on tours. We went to a safari park, we went to a wildlife refuge, and this is the vehicle that took us to the observation area where we got to see some wildlife in its natural habitat. So these are water buffalo that pull these little carts along. And we saw rhinos, we saw wild boar, peacocks, an amazing array. We didn't see any elephants except those that were chained up, unfortunately, in captivity. But one morning, on one of these trips, we were driving along the highway and we saw this. We saw a guy on an elephant. So we stopped the car, jumped out, and took a couple of pictures. Okay, then we left the tea gardens and we went to Darjeeling proper. Now, Darjeeling is about 7,000 feet up in elevation, so it's pretty up there. And you can see here from the mountainous roads and what have you that we went through, the main road from the tea gardens to Darjeeling was closed. So the driver said, we'll have to take the mountain route. That was one of the scariest drives I have ever done. I mean, there were hairpin turns, incredible, steep drops and what have you. But he was very confident and he did a good job. But it was white knuckle stuff all the way. But there we go. And then here we are in. This is Darjeeling. This is the view from our hotel room looking out. And there you can see the Himalayas, or the Himalayas, thank you, that the Indians call it. They pronounce it Himalayas, yes. So these are the Himalayas to us, and you can see snow-capped and about, 23,000 feet high. So extraordinary. The one negative was the second day that we were in Darjeeling, thank God it was the very end of the trip, I got COVID. So I saw a lot of this from my hotel room because.
Until 10 in the morning.
Oh, that's right.
The smog was so heavy
Yeah.
that the Himalayas disappeared.
Yeah.
Every day.
Okay, well that's it. And then from Darjeeling, we went back to this place called Bagdogra that has an airport, and then we flew back down to Chennai, which is down here, where we had flown into, and then from Chennai we went back home.
What mode of transportation from up there down?
We're talking air, flying. Amazingly modern airports. I mean, India is an incredible contrast between the new and the modern, and there was road construction, bridge construction all over the place. I mean, it's a country that is in many respects third world, but it's also very first world in terms of a lot of what is going on there. So questions. Maybe Bob and Russ, you want to come up and join me for questions, or that people might have?
So different cultures have different ways of greeting each other. What is it like in India? Is it hugs and shaking hands, or?
Namaste. If you shake hands, you must be careful to only use your right hand. All right? Also, when you eat, you only eat with your right hand, because your left hand is for toileting. Right? Because there's usually squat toilets and a bucket of water.
How many kids are in
Anywhere between, I think 25 to 35 has changed some because Modi, Prime Minister Modi, is trying to establish a more solidly Hindu state. And so Kumari is Catholic, a Christian.
And Hindu.
And Hindu, true. And so he made a decree that he's making it difficult on religious operations. So kids who do have any living family were mandated to return back to their villages, which was just awful because these kids go back to villages where there's nothing for them. In the home, they get an education, they get sent to the Danish school. They have, with their friends. It's a real family life, and they go back to the villages and there's nothing there for them. So it's pretty sad.
We funded a building now, a rental building for girls, because boys and girls can't be in the same building. So we funded that, and now we're actually just raised money to build a new building, so they'll have more children. Right? And, well, Jeff and Ruth, Susan, maybe Roy and Diane have helped fund children over the years, sponsored children at the orphanage. And I can't tell you how appreciative they are of what you've done for them.
It really is transformational. These things that happen in the villages where they can buy sewing machines for $100 a piece, where, sponsoring a child for $400, it's open to anyone. I mean, we are so well regarded there because we do fund kids. For $400, you can make an enormous difference in the life of a kid that provides them with an education and a roof over their head. We'd encourage more people to do that, actually.
Trish had a question.
How did the children get selected to go there if they have a family back in the village? Were they strictly class people, or what were the reason that certain ones were?
That's interesting, and it's all different ways. Sometimes, first of all, they're not all true orphans. Very often, one parent has died and the other one cannot afford to take care of it. In the Hindu religion, if your husband dies, the woman cannot remarry, and traditionally she couldn't work. Right? And they would come and bring their children. Okay? Sometimes children are abandoned at the orphanage. One project we're doing with Bless, we didn't show you, they have built a room and we're helping sponsor a place for abandoned babies, literally at birth. And they're there for about 3 months until the government can approve adoptive parents. So a lot of it is word of mouth. People will come to the orphanage. But also Kumari travels to the villages. And as Russ said, during COVID, when the children had to be returned to families because they didn't want them congregated, she would bring food to the village. Once a month, enough food to feed a family for a month. And then they would all ask her. And she has a waiting list that's unbelievably long.
Bob, in the very beginning, how did you find this village, or what was the process?
Well, after the tsunami in that area, I got there 10, 12 days after the tsunami, and what had happened is the NGOs had come. They had been there. They pitched tents, okay? They put in water supply, and they left because if you went a couple miles inland, you could get food. Right? And so there was nobody there with these people. I wandered around, and I met 6 Swedish students who were also studying in India. We wandered around and we discovered that village just by walking inland. This is what it was like at the ocean. Right? And we discovered that village of Shanmagar, the tribal village inland, just by wandering. And they were literally starving. And they asked us if we could get them some food. And we borrowed a flatbed trailer from Bless, the NGO that I ended up working with. We went to a rice mill about 10 miles away, loaded it up. There were 60 families, so we loaded it up with rice, and let me show you what happened. There's the rice mill. We drove back to the village. We got stuck in the sand. We could not get there. The kids, we would dig it out. And we had, remember now, we have 60 bags of rice, each is 50 kilograms, 110 pounds, 6,000 pounds of rice, plus dal and stuff, and we're stuck. All right. And the children dug it out. It was like in snow. And they'd dig it out, would go 3 feet, and go again. And when we got to the village, we decided we had to build a road to bring it in, and that's us building the road. Actually, that's me here. With the cloth on my head to carry the basket of dirt. So that's a road, so we could bring in more food and more supplies. We said, if we're going to work with you, we have to have access. And we brought in a government official, and he didn't want to do it, and we learned what we had to do. We blackmailed him. We said, we went to the newspaper and said, we're doing an article in the newspaper. And he said, well, I can't find the village on a map, and if you're building a road on public land, you can't do it. And who owns the land? And we said, we don't know. And he said, well, then you can't build the road. So we went to the newspaper, and they said they would come, and we had a press conference. And I went back to him, and I said, I told them that you won't build the road. And he said, I didn't say that. I said, I can't build the road. And he was very serious. And I said, you better come and explain. And when the newspaper people were there, and they were writing it down, he said, okay, you can build the road. So that's how we discovered the village, and we spent months with them.
Right.
Ruth.
Yeah, while you were there in those early days, and nobody had any food, and there were no resources, how were you living yourself? What were you your scientific
Question.
Thanks. We would, if I could get to town, I'd go to an ATM machine. And I'd get money and keep borrowing money and getting money. And if you went inland, you could buy rice and dal, and then we would live with the villagers. They would cook on an open fire, right, like this, right, and we would eat with them. And one time, we were eating in a home, and the invited in was sitting in the dirt eating this spicy food that I can't eat. Russ can handle the spiciest food in the world. And smoke's coming out my ears, I'm red. And he said, husband, through a translator we had who volunteered to work with us, fortunately. He came because of the tsunami. The husband said, "You like this food?" I said, "It's delicious." He said, "Good, you take my wife back to America, she cooks for you." And the deal was that I would pay her and she would send the money home. That's what he was. So but by the first years, the only water we could drink was boiled water over an open fire. So it was warm and tasted of smoke. This is a funeral I attended after the tsunami. The horrible thing about the tsunami, one, they're Hindu, so you have to have cremation. Bodies were swept out to sea. There were no bodies for cremation. Secondly, they're fishing villages. The ocean is like a god to them, and it turned on them. This was the ocean that was angry. And I explained that it wasn't the ocean, it was an earthquake that caused it. And they said, no, it was the ocean, we saw it. And it can do it tomorrow, because we don't know what we did wrong. So they lived in fear, as well as having to. And in these villages, a third to half the people were swept out to sea, just gone. 2 hours. This is what they were living in. Their village had been back there, and this is the tent city. The first thing we did was build a school for the children so that they would have some normalcy. Okay. I just want to show you the power of that tsunami. That's a metal bed. That's the door to the house. That's the bed bent in half. This house, can you see this line? Yeah. That's the water line. That's the inside of their home. Nothing left.
How far away from the ocean is that?
They're 100 yards. This big metal door just bent. This has 2 huge holes right through it. Thank you very much.